it's not AI that's going to take your job, but certainly someone with AI skills will. So learn the technology, embrace it with a sense of playfulness and keen to understand with a level of curiosity and learning around what the technology can do for you, both at a professional level, but also on a personal level as well. And if we start to take that mindset around playfulness of technology, we'll start to explore all aspects about how this is going to improve our lives.
Welcome to another episode of Extraordinary Leadership Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about future of leadership, and especially in the context of rising and booming generative AI. And for that conversation, I have invited an expert, a woman that is living and breathing that topic and is very passionately speaking and lecturing about it, Dr. Kate Barker, who is Chief Futurist, who is and has been an advisor for BCG and McKinsey, and bring 3 decades of experience and a lot of passion, and is the leading voice in the future of work. And I have an honor and pleasure to have her today in this episode and talk about this very important topic for all of us as leaders, how we can adapt and how we can lead with that changes, with that future. And I hope that you will get a lot of valuable insights that will help you to prepare for it. So without further ado, I want to welcome you here, Kate, and thank you for showing up and being here with me in this conversation.
Look, it's delighted to be here. I know that we've been having this conversation to get together to do this for several months now. So dare I say it might be even more than 6. But great to be here and that we've found the time in our schedules.
That's true. I know you'll be very busy. In speaking about this topic is one of the main on the stages. So also congratulations for bringing that and paving the way, and great to watch you as well, to see you bring that to vast majority of leaders as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I'm really curious to hear what brought you to this topic. And of course, how the journey led you to do it now, to do what you do. That could be also interesting for our listeners.
Yeah, having worked inside large corporations now for over 30 years, I'd paved the way through what was working in internal HR consulting before moving to external consulting firms, solving some of the biggest problems that we face around the world. And I guess I saw some of the major challenges continue to resurface. And it was really about applying a different way of thinking about how we need to live and work. And having done further research and looked at some of the client problems we were looking to address, is that we needed a new way of thinking about them. And it's that really prompted me to work into this area of the future of work. And of course, a call from NEOM saying, come and design our strategy for a $500 billion future city. We'll always get it kickstarted as well.
Yeah, which was a great opportunity also in kind of paving and shaping that as well in the booming country that looks towards the future.
Yeah. Having spoken to hundreds and thousands of organisations in workforce transformation, staff engagement, leadership and productivity, the same challenges and problems are arising year after year. So the ability to create a new slate in a greenfield site like NEOM and be able to really create a strategy and then test and pilot some of the new creative technology and ways of leading was a phenomenal opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah, fantastic. So kudos for that as well. And so where do we want to start this conversation of, future of leadership with booming and rising generative AI? Where would you like to start this conversation?
Yeah, let's start it, I think, with the major question that I always find when I'm on stage that I like to address at the top is really around the thing that's on the most people's mind when we think about AI or Gen AI on this topic. And what we hear from organisations, and if we really listen to our teams, it's really the greatest fear they have around job loss. That if I implement AI into my role, I'm going to lose my job. In fact, the latest research that I did earlier this year came out that 42% of employees feared technology, specifically AI, because they would lose their jobs. Now, it's really hard for organisations to fully implement AI into their organisations if their employees that are responsible for implementing it feel like if they do this, they're going to lose their job at the end of the day. So I think really tackling that, and I'd tackle it from the top of the meeting, really about it's not AI that's going to take your job. It's certainly someone with AI skills will. So learn the technology, embrace it with a sense of playfulness and keen to understand with a level of curiosity and learning around what the technology can do for you, both at a professional level, but also on a personal level as well. And if we start to take that mindset around playfulness of technology, we'll start to explore all aspects about how this is going to improve our lives.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned embracing it with playfulness,
Right,
and also
right,
openness,
right,
because it's not something that we can miss or avoid. Right, it's going to
right,
happen with or without us.
right, right.
And then the risk of eventually losing a job or things like that will be by not embracing that change, not embracing playfully. I like that word, the technology. So what are the ways that, leaders can embrace that more playfully and openly? This.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I've spoken to, as I said, thousands of organizations on doing this. But I just recently completed my thesis on this very topic around what are leading organizations and leaders doing globally around the world to embrace technology and some of the best practice and the initiatives. So I looked at technology companies, big pharma, consulting firms, and of course, manufacturing industries. And these are the four that are probably the most heavily impacted by AI. So have really taken some steps forward in the last 3 or 4 years in what they're doing in this space. And a couple of areas we looked at, and I'll give you three, is the first one is what we call as explainable AI. And this is
Mhm.
EAI. This is around explaining around the transparency of your algorithm about how organizations are using AI and what is the algorithm sitting behind the technology. And it's this ability around how do we start to create more transparency around how we're using technology. And with that, we bridge the gap around trust. And that's trust with leaders and their employees, it's trust with organizations and their customers, and that's trust between boards and senior management teams and the stakeholders. So the ability to be able to create EAI is going to be really critical. The other aspect we talk about that is that how do leaders build trust through empathy of their teams? So understanding that there is a dynamic that exists, this fear-based nature of human beings to feel the fear of impending technology and what that means for their own survival, their own happiness, their own job sustainability. So the ability to acknowledge that head on and lean into it with a sense of empathy, with the ability to say, so we're going to tackle this, but we're going to tackle it actually through giving you the skills to learn. So creating opportunities across the organisation for people to develop AI skills and come up with examples around how they can do that in their jobs to improve their roles. This is not about removing jobs. It's actually about giving people the skills who are closest to the job to be able to reinvent their jobs to do it differently. And if that means they can move to a 4-day week, well, in the UAE, we're all for that. And then I think the second area is we often talk about health and well-being and the high interest at the moment we have around mental health as employees. And I think there's a huge opportunity around how we use AI and the tools of AI to look at improving how we can manage our own health, our own mental health, our own physical health. And there's a lot of phenomenal technology, wearable tech that's coming out that we can play with at the moment. But being able to use that data to gain insights on how we can perform ourselves, how we can maintain our own health, our own mental health, well-being to make sure we're operating at our peak performance as well. So I think that's a great way to be able to use and play with those tools.
Wow, very important three focus points, and we can definitely dive into them separately. And the first question that really stuck in my mind is as AAI. Maybe we can explain that.
Yeah. So a lot of it comes down to when the idea that we have algorithms in organizations, and the algorithm for organizations for the consumer is creating a greater deal of personalization. Now, that can also be applied for organizations and employees, creating greater personalization around learning or training, or even health and wellness and benefit packages, compensation packages. So the personalization of AI is quite a powerful tool. But then the idea is it also comes with a double-edged sword of actually if AI is personalized, but what happens to our own data that's being used, and how is that data being used outside of the core purpose we were told it was used for? And then if it's not just used within our company, how is our company sharing that with others? And I guess the greatest example we talk about is, wearable tech devices that capture that information. And we know it's being captured, but who's accessing that data? Now, of course, Europe's done exceptionally well on GDPR, protecting personal data and information rights in AI. We know that there's a lot of data that exists in certain circles that we know that isn't being used. So when we talk about explainable AI, EAI, it's really about showing more transparency about how we're capturing this data, what are we using this data for, and what is our purpose around gaining this information for the algorithms, because it's the algorithms that feed back the data that help with decision making. So when leaders come out to inform their teams or organisation, they're making key decisions for the organisation, they need to be able to explain about where that data is coming from and what is it about that algorithm that created that data to get them to where they are. We can't just think that the AI spits out data and we go, yes, this explains it. We need to have more insights and information about it.
Make total sense. And that's how it's linked with transparency and trust.
Right, exactly.
Because it's the next challenge in building trust. Because transparency, of course, is a part of creating that trust. But obviously, with this amount of data and AI behind, we can actually lose that trust, because where's the information coming from? Where are they going to be used? And all of these narratives like, what do you want to do with this information? Maybe I should protect them. That's against and fitting really the sense of trust, actually.
And it's interesting you talk about trust, because the word trust has been around for many years now. It's not a new concept. But interestingly, it's at the key point of every pivotal concept or issue or challenge we are facing at the moment. And we think about, just the political challenges we're facing at the moment globally that we see as, 50% of the polls went to the election, 50% of the people went to the election this year. And just, this week we see South Korea and Paris having significant overturn in government elections. This level of challenge around people having trust for established organisations, governments or organisations is becoming key. Now, that coupled with what we see is how do we build trust in terms of transparency? And one of the biggest areas we find is the amount of misinformation or how information's used coercively to convince or lead others. So that ability around building trust inside your communication platforms is going to be really key. So what we're seeing is that this area around building a sense of authenticity about who we are as individuals and leaders becomes even more profound for organisations about how they lead forward. And as leaders have the first touch point with all the people, it's their ability to be able to demonstrate that level of authenticity that will drive those trust-based relationships across the organisation.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And I'm glad that you actually mentioned that, because thinking about the future of leadership and how the AI is, or generative AI is impacting that on just the topic of trust, which obviously is foundational of leadership and thriving organizations. It is an interesting twist because, yes, on one side, we'll have so much possibilities. We have already so much possibilities to gain efficiency of our work through the different generative AIs.
Right.
So going back to the question of will I lose the job? What is with my job is one worry. But another is the importance of the human aspects, the importance of authenticity as an element of trust for leaders, and leaning more into being authentic, honest, transparent, congruent, whichever words we want to put here in this definition, and also human, right? So that connects well with the empathy that you mentioned.
Yeah. And that question I get asked around typically is, well, what do you see as the future of leadership if this is where we're here at the moment? And, it's certainly going to be human-augmented leadership. We're certainly going to see leaders using technology integrated into every aspect of every piece of work that they do, that it becomes so augmented into their own way of being as a leader that we don't see the difference between technology and the human. Now, that's a pretty powerful place to play. But what I think is fundamentally really important about that is that it means that leaders can then really focus on their stakeholder relationships, really lean into those relationships with their team, their colleagues, their own boss, and into the external market with clients. They also get to then focus more on the strategy of aspects of how they do things. And then, lean into the purpose of why they're doing it. So it less becomes the transactional work of leadership, because a lot of that decision-making, even coaching, right, will be used with technology. The ability that it can lead into more significant aspects at a far deeper level around leadership is going to be really profound. The purpose of why we're doing it and what we're doing and why we exist. Thinking about strategy, not just today or this week or next month or even next quarter, thinking more strategically, holistically about what we're doing. And then looking at your stakeholder relationship map and how you're nurturing and investing in those relationships, which we often charge from one day to the next and not really think about those relationships and what do those relationships need from me as a leader and how do I then nurture and foster them to the next level.
Yeah. So, on one side, hearing you, what comes to my mind is this image of, oof, I can finally breathe because, so much stuff will be done by AI. So I can delegate, I can offload all those operational or tactical things and even more, right? Even part of strategy, part of thinking. And gain more time for strategy, for relationship building, for customer and employees conversations, and doing the work that is meaningful for me.
Right.
And on the other, I'm thinking, so that means we as leaders need to evolve and acquire different skills and evolve also as leaders into leading more from that space of purpose, alignment, authenticity. You've mentioned that word before as well, and are able to cultivate and nurture those relationships and moving from this transactional to more transformational type of leadership as well. What's your thoughts on that one?
Look, exactly. So, it's the idea that we're running a calendar or a schedule that's back-to-back meetings and that we're constantly busy. A lot of that will be taken by technology. The idea as humans is what we want you to lean more into being more of the human, because that's the aspect that technology will never be able to do. And, and I think we've been caught up in a space of being busyness as leaders. We've been caught up in a space of hitting quarter targets or year-end results. And while we understand that leading and empathy and coaching is all of that, it's really become secondary to, the functional aspects of completing my job with an overarching fear of job loss. And that's just not line level staff. This is middle level and executive level roles are in this space as well, as many organizations are downsizing. So, the ability to lean in and learn more about how the tech is evolving and really becoming and I'm going to lean into that phrase around a growth mindset, is that the technology is advancing so fast. So to have a playful, mindful that it's another toy coming out and how you're going to learn about doing it is going to be really key. And then how you're going to advance that in your own personal and professional life is going to be key. How do you make that easier for what you want to do in your life? And it's those leaders that will use that as their advantage that will see that it'll get ahead much faster and, ultimately be happier, right?
Yeah, because, well, if you can offload so many things to, to generative AI, and that thinks and acts faster, come up with ideas faster, then of course you gain time. And we all see it. We all have access even to, chat GTP or other solutions on the markets. I think most of us already are using some portion of it, if not more, so we can experience this gain of efficiency as well as co-create even, right? That's how I see it. It's more co-creation process with some different intelligence, right? That has resourcefulness in other areas than myself. That's how I see it personally, and can bring a different level of thinking as well.
Absolutely. Apart from the phenomenal innovation that's going on in health and education around AI and how this is fundamentally going to improve our lives, we will look back this year, 2023, 24, 25, in 5-6 years' time and go, this is just a crazy time, how much things have evolved and changed. So yeah, I'm keen to share with individuals to understand that the rapid pace we're excelling far more advanced than they can ever imagine. The investment that's going into AI and how this is going to fundamentally change our lives, and really pushing people to take that step forward and learn about the technology because it's evolving so fast that you leave it and it's going to be harder to catch up. So the idea that you learn it, you take it home and make sure that your family learns it, whether it's your aging parents or your kids or your siblings, whatever that is embrace that ability with a mindset of curiosity and fascination and adventure to learn about it, because it's evolving so fast, it'll be in a space that you will likely be left behind. And we don't want to create environments, communities or societies where people don't get ahead of it quickly.
And also that touches then on a space of not belonging, right? When everybody moves on and you are kind of not fitting in, and all those dilemmas can also transpire from that if you don't really take actions into learning about it.
Well, the idea is that, there's a high growth rate of what we need around is reskilling individuals about how to do that. And organizations, many of them are taking a lead role. I spoke to the likes of Microsoft, of course, SAP, Amazon, some of the manufacturing companies. They're taking a proactive step around implementing AI skills. In fact, I just did a whole study on Saudi Arabia across 12 different industries, across 3 different levels in the organization around how much AI is going to impact roles in those organizations, and then how do we go back in and implement skills in certain professions and roles based on their Vision 2030, which is primarily around tourism, healthcare and education. So, as a Saudi, we're talking, 40 million people that we're looking at as a population. About how do we get that population AI equipped is quite profound. So, countries are looking at it at a grand scale, which is quite exciting. But, I think that ability to make sure you look at your own network and think that, how do I make sure that my network is learning these skills or getting into these programs? Because there are plenty of online AI training programs that we can learn. It's just the ability to be able to use that to advance your own sense around happiness or what's going to mean in your life as well.
Yeah, and I would like to explore that more. But before we go there into, how to embrace it, what are the steps which you can take? The question that is in my mind is related to the mental health, which you mentioned, the third area where generative AI will also benefit. How generative AI can help us with it.
Yeah, so I do a lot of keynotes for employee assistance programs and for ED&I within organisations around what are some of the latest technologies that AI can help with mental health. And we are certainly going through a mental health crisis. This has been going on since the early days of COVID. We've seen the ramp up. And while we thought the end of COVID, or what was to be the end of COVID, things would improve, but it just hasn't. It really just hasn't. So the fear based around that is quite significant. Now, AI can certainly help that. We're seeing a lot of coaching moving to AI, so more democratization across coaching for individuals that have access to AI, coaching models and tools to be able to help them manage mindsets and behaviors around their own mental health. A lot of CBT, as you can imagine, cognitive behavior therapy for coaching tools has been phenomenal. One of my personal, of course, which is I love the coaching. I spend a lot of time in a coaching space. But, the wearable technologies that we can have, we're looking to test out now cortisol bands, which we've had, Apple Watches have been around for a while, and we've had the Aurora rings to measure our sleep. Now what we're testing is cortisol bands, so the ability to manage your cortisol levels, which we know can spike throughout people's days, and manage their energy of how they contribute to that, which is going to be profound as well. So the wearable devices, we're going to see ramping up a lot of that exercise and activities as well as give access to improving people's wellness and health as the data comes reportable on that as well. Just to, certainly we look at Microsoft Health and some of the inventions they're doing around eye cures. So the idea is that AI on your iPhone throughout Africa has cured 98% of eye diseases before they become problematic. An AI tool on your iPhone throughout Africa through Microsoft Health, which is pretty profound, that there's a lot of these cases that won't exist. And of course, for all the women out there, we know that AI is picking up early stage breast cancer and the formation of breast cells, cancer cells, 4 years before they are even diagnosed as cancer cells. So the idea, we're expecting in 4 or 5 years' time, the idea that you'll have breast cancer won't be a thing because you'll have early stage testing before it even becomes a cancerous cell. For all the millions of women out there that have been juggling that as a health issue, that's pretty profound.
Wow. So it's really like when I'm listening to you more and more, it's really the word game changer that we
Right,
had the conversation
right.
just before. It's just coming back and coming back because so much benefits and so much more advancement and so much more a better society and of course
Yeah.
organizations.
And what I would say what's really key about it, and for all the employees out there working very hard in their roles, it's those individuals that will come up with the great ideas of how we can use AI. And we really need people to lean into it, into their own jobs, to invent these products, to create use cases that makes their job much easier. It's individuals that will create this as a world for us. It's not AI that's going to be some box coming up with a great idea. It's us as individuals that will create it. So really leaning into looking for that and how we improve it. Now, it's no silver bullet, and I know there's a lot of issues around ethical standards and governance, which I've done a lot of research on. But the idea is that we can start to think about it around how can we solve some of these problems in our lives to make our lives much better. I mean, we're living on a 38, 40-hour week that was designed back in the 17th century for pre-industrial stage of work hours. And it's certainly not how we live and work now. We're living in an environment where we know that a lot of the work we are doing is transactional administrative and offers very little value to our teams or to our clients. So the ability to be able to eliminate a lot of that transactional low-value work to technology, when we can actually invest and nurture and foster more meaningful relationships, I think is going to be quite profound. And then lean into the idea around how do we actually add back to society as a whole? How can we solve some of these biggest challenges, whether it's climate change, whether it's poverty, whether it's the issues around societal migration across the world, or what we're seeing is, civil unrest in many of the countries. I think this is where the challenge becomes quite interesting.
Yeah. So, the question that comes to me when you're sharing is how would the day look like when leaders are, fully embracing that technology and know how to use it, know how to leverage in their days? How would a day of such a leader look like in the future, or maybe not so long term future?
Yeah, look, I want to embrace the ability for us to be able to make mistakes, learn and make mistakes, and have fun exploring with a sense of adventure and curiosity. So, trialing things as a pilot and putting a sense of fun or intrigue or interest around it. And I often do this with a lot of organizations of, let's create you as an innovative organization, which we all like to think we are, and start to pilot and test some of this. By no means are we looking for perfection. In fact, it may just fall flat. But the idea that we've tried and played around with it gives us an opportunity as a learning base to take it to the next level. So be able to experiment, I think, is really key. And it takes the pressure off getting it wrong. Too often we think we have to get it right and be perfect, but actually play with it and experiment with it. And in that experimentation process, we're co-creating it with our teams, that they get to be part of it as opposed to it being applied to them. And I think that's what's really interesting. So maybe providing use cases about how they're going to streamline a process or make a team a meeting more effective, or how they're going to create a strategy document that's more powerful or engaging, or communicate quarter-end results with their team in an environment that's far more immersive. How do we start to think about it more creatively, I think? I think as leaders, what we'll start to see is them being more relaxed and being more joyful, because there is less pressure that they have to get it right the first time. And they're corralling and collaborating with teams that'll help advance the level of thinking to take it to the next level, to ensure that they're more successful at the end of the day with it. Yeah, I think the world needs more leaders that are more relaxed in their approach of how they're gaining more joy out of what they're doing than what is a level of, stress and mental health that I know that many of them are leading with at the moment.
That's true. And I love that you share the growth mindsets, right? How do I embrace that change with a growth mindset, with playfulness, with openness, with experimentation and allowing actually learnings from those mistakes?
But I just want to say is in this region, I find it extraordinary because they love learning. They love experimenting, and they are passionate about understanding around what best practices are around the world and how can they tailor or take it to the next level in this region. And a lot of the clients I work with are curious to explore about how we do something that's quite new. And I think that mindset in this region is really powerful.
Yeah, which is great indeed. Living here and witnessing all those visions unfolding and going,
Right.
it's really a great place to live and be and contribute to. And you mentioned about the relaxed leaders, so it's kind of, it's like we in. You brought me in, with already that vision of how much is possible when we embrace and immerse ourselves more into that. So the question I guess I'm having, and maybe listeners too, is like, okay, where do I start? What, first of all, can I do as an individual, leading organization, leading business, leading team? And two, how can I help my team? How can I help my organization to embrace it? I know you mentioned some of them, but maybe there's more we can elaborate on.
Yeah. And as we both know in the leadership space, it all starts with the inner work, right? So the inner space.
My favorite word.
Right. Right. So, the ability to actually look at, what is it about myself that I need to look at doing and focus on? And if that's about building up your AI skills, it's about becoming more knowledgeable about technology. Or is it perhaps stopping resisting calling the tech person for help and you starting to work out how to solve some of these problems yourself and become more skilled at how to manage that technology? Start to look at how you do that. And in you behaving that way, you're demonstrating that for your family and for your team. So their ability to go, okay, I'm going to problem solve this for myself. Or I'm going to start to learn these tech skills because my leader was doing it and he sounded really enthusiastic. And the common phrase I always use, what interests my boss fascinates me. So the ability to be able to think about that you're demonstrating that for others at a core skill, I think, is really key. And then making sure that you're freeing up time to have more conversations with your team, your peers, your colleagues, and of course your family. But the ability to be able to go, actually, I'm going to make sure that I'm freeing up this time to do more value add. And the team around me are seeing me add more value add to these conversations. I think that's going to be really critical. I would always say make sure you invest in your 5 personal conduct of performance. And that's really about looking after your own mental health and your physical health and your mindset. Constantly learning is a game changer, but also, it's constantly in a state of constant change and adaptation. So the ability to actually look after your own personal well-being factors is going to be key as well. I think they're the top ones I would think about doing.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I love that you mentioned, being the role model in it, right? Because it all starts always with you, and people will role model your behaviors and will be more interested.
Right.
I think what really landed is also having more of those conversations and challenging maybe each other and finding together where are they, what are those trainings, those masterclasses or longer programs that are of value for me or for us as a team, for business to really get on and learn something to really then make it practical.
Yeah.
Apart from what we already know, which we mentioned before, like ChatGPT. Even there, we need to learn how to prompt. And I think the third is such a tying in, right? Because the well-being, mental health, the rates of burnout, mental health, we just look at Gallup statistics so high. So we all kind of challenge with it in every region globally. And this is where I can see how AI is going to help us to give some indicators and maybe even counsel or coach some areas. I can see this one coming. And another is actually going back to the inner work, going back to self-mastery, going back to us, into creating consciously that space where we also role model that, right? And getting the help and support we need so that we basically balance as well.
Yeah.
And make the best use as well of those technologies.
And I think if I added anything to that, it would be the ability to lean in and co-create it with people around you. So we minimize that fear-based thinking that AI is going to take our jobs. We're co-creating use cases or scenarios that we can adapt AI to our own jobs. I think that will alleviate a lot of the fear that we're experiencing at the moment.
Yeah, and that's what you mentioned earlier about developing those skills, right? Upskilling, reskilling, I think will be an important topic for any organization, which is tied back with one of the first points you mentioned also in wrap up of what to do next is to go and learn about it and discover more. Yeah, I feel that we could probably go on and go on in this
We
conversation.
could.
I know that you have a ton of data and insights. Is there any last message, Kate, that, out of this rich conversation about how AI, generative AI, is influencing leadership, influencing the future, influencing our lives, that you would like to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, so as leaders and listening to this podcast, I would certainly share with them around lean into it, have fun with it, and make sure that you're constantly upskilling your own skills so you can play it forward for others. I think that's really key that I would add to it. But to stay abreast of it, I'm constantly on stages around the world speaking on this topic. Happy to share more data and insights. And of course, many case studies with organisations I've been working with about how they're tackling ethics and governance and reskilling and leadership competencies are really taking a turn, and sharing some stories around the work I've done in that space as well. So they can connect with me on LinkedIn, or they can find me on Instagram. I'll hear by all means and let me know.
Yes, thank you very much for mentioning that. There will be definitely a link also in the description of this episode so that people know how to find you if they haven't heard yet of you.
Yeah.
You're pretty visible there in the space. Of course. So thank you very much, Kate, for, sharing insightful aspects of future for all of us, future of leadership, future of organizations, future of our lives, and how much actually it can benefit us all as well. What landed is this case of health that you also mentioned. So it's just in all different areas of our lives, right? And grateful for this conversation, grateful for showing us how to embrace it with growth mindset, with curiosity, with playfulness, taking it as a learning experience and bringing it to our family. So thank you for all of that today.
Thank you for having me. And I'm pleased we finally made it happen before the year closed. So wonderful. Thank you very much.
Such a fantastic time, isn't it?
Thank you.
And topic for bridging to the next. Thank you very much. And for all the listeners, thank you very much for watching and listening to us. I hope that you really, truly enjoyed this conversation as I did. And there will be probably lots of takeaways and insights from it for you. So please like it, share it, as well as others that would benefit from this conversation, and join us next time. Thank you very much.